Another microorganisms that we are going to discuss is earthworms. So take note that hindi siya microorganism but then it is macroorganism kasi kita na natin to, makikita natin yung mga earthworm in the soil. So these are not micro but they are macroorganism found in the soil. Earthworms belong to the Annelida family. And the earthworm bodies are made up of ring-like segments called annuli. So, meron siya mga segments, di ba? Yung mga segment, anong bang tawag dyan? Yung mga linya-linya dun sa earthworm. These segments are covered in setae or small bristles which the worm uses to move and burrow. Yung segment na yun ay merong mga bristles, parang mga brushes, yung parang sa toothbrush. 'Di ba may mga yung sa brush na yun, there are bristles which they use it to move and burrow into the soil. Yun. And there are around 7,000 species worldwide. Ang dami palang klase ng earthworms. And they do not live in deserts or regions where there is permafrost or permanent snow and ice. So pag masyadong mainit in desert, or pag ang area naman ay masyadong malamig at merong permanent snow and ice, hindi siya tumitira doon sa area na yun. Ito yung sinasabi ko guys na segments, so yung mga linya-linya na yan. And if you check closely, meron siyang parang mga brush bristles na naka-attach dyan na ginagamit nila ngayon sa pagbabarrow, sa pagtutusok, sa pag-penetrate sa soil and their movement. So their bodies are characterized by a tube within a tube. So merong tube within a tube construction with an outer muscular body wall surrounding a digestive tract that begins with the mouth in the first segment. And as they burrow, pag nagpe-penetrate sila sa ilalim, they consume soil, extracting nutrients from decomposing organic matter like leaves and roots. So kung titingnan natin ngayon yung worm na to, ito yung kanyang opening ng bibig ng worm. So yun siya. That's the mouth opening. So meron siya ngayon mga setae, mga bristles na ginagamit niya ngayon for nagpa-penetrate sa lupa at nag-move sa lupa. Kung nagpa-penetrate sila ngayon sa lupa, kinakain nila ngayon yung soil, and by this, they extract nutrients from decomposing organic matter like leaves and roots. There are two kinds of ecological group of earthworms, the epigic and the endogic. What are the epigic and the endogic? Epigic, they live in the litter layer. Yun, so yung sa may mga litter area, sa may mga tuyong dahon, tuyong mga damo, those are where the epigic group of earthworms live. Samantalang ang endogic, they live in the top 10 to 30 centimeter of soil. They are usually pale pink red worm. Samantalang ang anisic ay they live in the vertical burrow up to 1 meter. Like the introduced night crawler. So, nasa ilalim siya ngayon ng lupa. Nasa medyo ilalim siyang banda ng lupa. So, we have the epigic, which lives in the litter layer of the soil. Yung may mga damo-damo, dyan malapit. The endogic, which is present in the top 10 to 30 centimeter of soil. And the anisic lives in the vertical burrow up to 1 meter. So, kung tingnan nyo ngayon yung formation niya, ang epigic at saka endogic ay horizontal yung kanyang present. Yan siya. So, these are the epigic and the endogic. But then, the anisic is usually vertical yung kanyang present. Patayo siya. So those are the three ecological group of earthworms: epigic, endogic, and anisic. So what are the benefits of earthworms? Earthworms improve nutrient availability. Katulad sa ibang mga microorganisms, Earthworms improve the nutrient availability in the soil because worms feed on plant debris like the dead roots, leaves, grasses, manures, and the soil, and their digestive system concentrates the organic and mineral constituents in the food that they eat, so their cast, yung dumi nila, uh, are richer in available nutrients than the soil around them. Kaya usong-uso ngayon yung vermicast, 'di ba? Yung sa vermiculture wherein you grow crawlers, earthworms to produce cast which are more uh, richer in available nutrients than the soil around them. So isa to sa mga benefits ng earthworm. The nitrogen in the cast is readily available to plants and the worm bodies decompose rapidly, contributing nitrogen content of soil. Pag umaebs yung mga bulate na yon, yung mga worms na yon, earthworms na yon, they produces cast, and those cast, they are very rich in nitrogen, which is readily available to plants. And then pag namamatay ngayon yung mga bulate na yon, yung earthworms na yon, they can also contribute to the additional nitrogen content of soil. That's why they are one of the main major source of nutrients in the soil. In a study in New Zealand, it shows that worm casts release 4 times more phosphorus than does surface soil. So, can you imagine, pag meron kang maraming cast ng earthworms, it can be a good source of phosphorus. And worms often leave their nutrient-rich cast in their tunnels, providing a favorable environment for plant root growth. So, pag gumagalaw siya, medyo gumagawa siya ngayon ng mga holes, mga butas-butas, and it will provide a favorable environment for plant root growth. And the tunnels, yung mga butas na yon, they also allow roots to penetrate deeper into the soil where they can reach extra moisture and nutrients. And the tunneling of the earthworm help incorporate surface-applied lime and fertilizers in the soil. The effect is that they improve the drainage of the soil. The extensive channeling and burrowing by earthworms loosen and aerates the soil and improves soil drainage. Soils with earthworms drain up to 10 times faster than soils without earthworms. So can you imagine, pag maraming earthworms sa lupa nyo, mas mabilis mag-drain yung tubig kumpara sa lupa na walang earthworms. In zero-tilled soils, where worm populations are higher, the water infiltration can be up to 6 times greater than in cultivated soils. Pag hindi mo masyadong binubungkal yung lupa, the water infiltration can be up to 6 times greater than in cultivated soils. Kasi ang nangyayari is, pag binubungkal natin yung lupa, we destroy the structure of the soil, and at the same time, we also destroy some of the earthworms present in the area. Diba, pag nagbubungkal ka, syempre, matatamaan natin yung earthworms na nandun sa area. Earthworm tunnels also act under the influence of rain, irrigation, and gravity as passageways for lime and other materials. So, doon dumadaan yung mga ina-apply na lime or apog, as well as fertilizers. Aside from improve drainage, they also improve soil structure. Earthworm cast cement soil particles together in water-stable aggregates, and they are able to store moisture without dispersing. Studies have shown that earthworms, which leave their cast on the soil surface, rebuild topsoil. So, ang laking contribution yan, guys, if the topsoil can be rebuilt. So, earthworms can have a great potential. In favorable conditions, when their population is optimum, they can bring up about 50 tons per hectare annually, enough to form a layer of 5 millimeter deep. 5 millimeter, medyo Makapal din siya, guys. And one trial found worms built an 18 centimeter thick topsoil in 30 years. Yun nga lang, dapat favorable yung condition na mag-grow ngayon yung earthworms. They also improve productivity. In a research conducted in New Zealand and in Tasmania in Australia, earthworms introduced to worm-free perennial pastures produced an initial increase of 70 to 80% in pasture growth, with a long-term 25% increase, and this raised stock carrying capacity. And the most productive pastures in the worm trials had up to 7 million worms per hectare, weighing 2.4 tons. And there was a close correlation between pasture productivity and total worm weight. So, mas maganda yung pasture, yung grass formation, production, when there is a high population of worm. With some 170 kilogram of worms for every ton of annual dry matter production. But then, how are we going to encourage the population of earthworms? Earthworms do not like soil that is too acid, alkaline, dry, wet, hot, or cold. And their presence is a good indicator of soil conditions suitable for plant growth. If you are going to work in the area, like for example, mag-garden ka, and then you notice when you are preparing the land that there's a lot of earthworms, it can be an indicator that that soil is suitable for plant growth. Kasi nag-exist dyan ngayon yung bulati yung mga earthworms na yan, ibig sabihin maganda yung condition niya. Kasi pag pangit yung condition niya, hindi siya tumitira dyan. So it is a good indicator, earthworm present in the area, it is a good indicator that the soil conditions in that area is suitable for plant growth. So how are we going to encourage the population of earthworms, good population of earthworms? We need to ensure that the soil pH is above 4.5, not acidic soil. We need to increase organic matter. We have to reduce the use of some fertilizers and fungicides because they can kill those earthworms. We need to keep the soil moist, not saturated with water. Ibig sabihin, hindi siya lubog sa tubig. Meron lang siya enough na moist so that they can easily move through the soil. Improve the drainage, reduce soil compaction, reduce cultivation kasi every time we cultivate the soil, pag binubungkal natin yung lupa, unknowingly, natatamaan natin yung mga earthworms na nasa lupa. And protect from climatic extremes. When we say climatic extremes, masyadong mainit, masyadong basa yung lupa. Masyadong malamig din, isa din yan sa climatic extreme. So how do we do that? To ensure soil pH that is above 4.5. Why? Because earthworms do not like acid soils with pH less than 4.5. The addition of lime raises pH and it also adds calcium. And these earthworms need a continuous supply of calcium. So when the calcium is absent in the soil, their growth is not at optimum. The South Australian research found that earthworm numbers doubled when the pH rose from 4.1 to 6.7. So, pag ini-increase natin yung pH ng lupa, nag-grow din ngayon yung population ng earthworm because you increase the pH, hindi na siya nagiging acidic, and at the same time, you also supply calcium in the soil. Another way to increase and encourage earthworm is to increase organic matter because earthworm feeds on soil and dead or decaying plant remains, including straw, leaf litter, and dead roots. They are the principal agents in mixing dead surface litter within the soil, making the litter more accessible to decomposition by soil microorganisms. And animal dung, animal compost, is also an attractive food for many species of earthworms. Another farming practices to provide food for earthworm is permanent pasture. So, permanent pasture provides organic matter as leaves. So, merong siyang continuous supply ng food. So, we have leaves and roots na pag meron tayo mga tanim na mga damo in the area, pag namamatay yung damo, we added leaves and roots which can be a source of food to earthworms. And the pasture slashings and manure from grazing animals are also a good source of organic matter in pasture. Other way is to incorporate green manure crops. These are the fodder crops turned into the soil to provide organic matter to benefit the following crop. So, kinakat daw na ngayon yung mga buhay pa yung green manure, kinakat daw na natin siya and then we incorporate them to the soil to provide organic matter to the following crop. And the crops are grazed or slashed, sometimes pulverized, and then left on the surface or turned into the soil. Another is crop stubbles. Yung mga tira-tira pag nag-harvest tayo ng mga mais, di ba? May mga puno pa ng mga mais na natitira dun sa field. Stubble is an important source of organic matter and wag nating sunugan kasi burning stubbles destroy surface organic matter and this affect worm numbers. It is best to leave stubble to rot down and sow following crops into the stubble using aerial sowing, direct drill, or at least minimum tillage para maiwasan nating mapatay or ma-injured yung ibang earthworms in the lupa. All these techniques means less cultivation and this also encourages earthworms. Another method is rotation. When we rotate pasture with crops, it helps build up organic matter levels as well as earthworm numbers. And then of course, we have to reduce the use of fertilizers and some fungicides because highly acidifying fertilizers such as ammonium sulfate and some fungicides reduce worm numbers. And we need to keep the soil moist. Moist lang siya ha, hindi siya talagang lubog sa tubig because worm can lose 20% of their body weight each day in mucus and castings. So, kailangan nila ngayon ng moisture to stay alive. Because every time they produce cast and mucus, nawawala din yung kanilang tubig sa kanilang katawan. So, we need to supply tubig, enough tubig para sila ay magbuhay. Ground cover such as pasture or stubble reduces moisture evaporation kasi merong nakakover dun sa lupa. So, mas maganda kung nakakover ngayon yung lupa para hindi siya ganun kainit. And decaying organic matter like humus holds moisture in the soil. In dry times, some species burrow deep into the soil and are inactive until rain reactivates them. So may pag masyadong mainit ang panahon, yung ibang mga bulat, earthworms, instead na dun sila sa taas ng banda ng lupa nakatira, they go down so that it will not be too warm and seeking out a source for water. Kasi sa ilalim ng lupa ay may mas maraming source ng tubig. And then of course, we need to improve the drainage because worm needs reasonably aerated soil. They also need oxygen. So, kailangan nila ng aeration. Aerated soil, may oxygen. And it's necessary to have drainage or mound soil in wetter areas to prevent waterlogging. And we need to reduce soil compaction because highly compacted soil makes it difficult for earthworms to move through. And by doing that, to minimize the trampling of the soil animals in wet conditions. So, yung pagtapak-tapak ng mga animals in wet conditions has to be also limited para maiwasang makompact ngayon yung lupa. And then we need to reduce cultivation because plowing soil reduces earthworm numbers. Researchers have found out that after 4 years, zero-tilled products had twice as many worms as cultivated soils. However, shallow cultivation may not affect worm numbers. Pag medyo, every time na binubungkal natin yung lupa, we destroy and we kill some of those earthworms. Yun nga lang, pag medyo mababaw lang naman yung pagbungkal-bungkal natin sa lupa, it can be, effect is not so great. Yun nga lang, pag medyo deep na yung pag-araro natin sa lupa at pagbungkal-bungkal, ayun, marami na tayong mahihit na mga earthworms. So, we reduce cultivation. And of course, we protect from climatic extremes. Earthworms are intolerant of drought and frost and do not like dry, sandy soils. Meaning, pag masyadong mainit at saka malamig, it's not a favorable condition for the earthworms to live. Remember, they need water because they lose a lot of water every time they produce cast. They are active only when the soil is moist and are inactive when it is dry. Organic matter cover helps reduce the effect of climatic extremes and retain soil moisture. That ends our topic for today, which is all about earthworms. Watch out for the last part of this series. And thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and let me know if you have some clarifications. See you next time, guys. Bye.